So it's officially summer break for the Philadelphia Eagles as they just wrapped up their spring training period, which included OTAs and mandatory minicamp this past week, and we learned so much from these practices as there were a bunch of players that really stood out and impressed during minicamp and OTAs, whether it be some of the more established players, some of the new additions, or even the young guys. I mean, there were just so many players who made the most of their opportunities and shined during the Eagles spring practices, and they should have the fans excited as we move towards training camp in a little over a month. So in this video, we're going to look at 11 Eagles that impressed everyone during minicamp and OTAs, so let's not waste any time and we'll get straight into it. Okay, so the first guy that I want to talk about that really was able to impress some people during the spring was third-year defensive tackle Jordan Davis, as this offseason was a big one for the Georgia product, given the fact that he's kind of been under some heavy scrutiny since how last year ended, as Davis, along with the rest of the Eagles defense, completely fell off in the second half of the year, and Davis in particular I think gets singled out a lot for the collapse due to the fact that there were reports and some speculation saying that it seemed like Davis was out of shape and being fined by the Eagles for being overweight, and I think this recent report highlighting the firing of the Eagles head trainer and specifically the VP of Player Performance Ted Rath kind of confirms that claim, as it details that although Rath's tactics of less training worked very well in 2022 as the Eagles had all 22 starters healthy by the time they got to the Super Bowl, the same strategies backfired in 2023, and some people on the Eagles staff felt like certain players like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter were not in the shape that they needed to be in last year, in part because of Rath. So long story short, Jordan Davis was out of shape last year and fell off in a season where he was being really heavily relied upon and expected to break out. So heading into this offseason, obviously the number one priority for Davis was just simply to get in great shape. And based on everything we saw and heard this spring, he seems to have done that, with photos and videos coming out of OTAs and minicamp of JD looking a bit slimmer and just in better overall shape. And then we have comments from a few different people regarding Davis' condition, including Davis himself.
In terms of just being in my best shape, I'm getting in the best condition of my life.
Plus then, we also have fellow Georgia Bulldog Nolan Smith saying this about Davis and his condition.
If you can't tell, that boy look good. He nice and slim. He running around. He doing box drills like it's nothing. And the box drill, really, I told him it's like a linebacker drill. And I couldn't be more proud of him just because it's not an easy drill. Especially if you go out there and do it right now, I bet you would die. So yeah.
So judging from the comments from these two, it's hard to deny that Davis clearly answered the call of getting into better shape, and it certainly helps to have a coaching staff that has placed a huge emphasis on Davis conditioning, with defensive line coach Clint Hurtt saying that that's the main thing Davis needs to do for him to reach his potential, and Nick Sirianni also telling the team to come back to training camp in the best shape of their lives. So overall, Jordan Davis definitely was one of the most exciting players during this spring period, and I didn't even talk about the fact that he even had a sack on one of the media open practices on Jalen Hurts. So if JD can develop as a pass rusher and also stay in shape, that's definitely a scary thing for the league. But now moving on to another big man, but from the other side of the ball, the new addition Mekhi Becton is someone who drew some attention during Eagles minicamp especially, as the offensive tackle has showed off some newfound versatility since arriving in Philly, as Becton currently seems to be playing 4 different positions for the Birds, being left tackle, left guard, and right guard, and seems to be the top backup at each one of those spots, which for one, I mean, that's just great depth for the offensive line, but it also shows just how willing Becton is to do whatever it takes to get better and put himself in a better position in this league individually, but also just his willingness to learn and do anything for his new team, and specifically his new offensive line coach in Jeff Stoutland, who Becton actually recently spoke very highly of, saying, quote, "The way he treats his players and the way he talks to them, you want to do whatever for him." So it certainly sounds like Stout has Becton bought in, which is amazing, and there's also no denying that Mekhi has great potential, with him being a former first-round pick and also having great size and talent, and it's also been great to hear that in his short time with the Eagles so far, he has been impressing, as All-Pro tackle and future Hall of Famer Lane Johnson had this to say about him.
Yeah, no, Mekhi's, a huge guy, a lot of potential, and I mean, he's probably had one of the best off seasons here. He's played some guard at times. He's done really well, just a big, strong, powerful dude. So, I think he's going to help us a lot this year. Whether he plays tackle or guard, but a guy that big that can move that well. We definitely need him out there.
So I'm definitely very excited about the potential that Becton has should he continue to develop and learn. And Mekhi even said himself that he hopes Philly is a long-term home for him, so hopefully he develops into a high-level player that could potentially be Lane's replacement when he eventually retires. But for now, it's just great to hear about him impressing at minicamp. And another new addition who was also super impressive during the spring for the Eagles was cornerback Isaiah Rodgers, who really has established himself as potentially the early favorite to start at cornerback number 2 next to Darius Slay, although we definitely still have plenty of other contenders for that spot, which we'll get to later. But Rodgers mainly got first-team reps at cornerback during OTAs and minicamp, minicamp from the practices that we saw, and he made a ton of plays throughout, with the most notable one being a pick 6 during the second open OTA practice on Jalen Hurts. And what's so awesome about what Rodgers was able to do during the spring is the fact that he literally hasn't played in an NFL game since the 2022-23 season, as he was of course suspended all last year. So coming back and looking like he's looked is definitely deserving of a ton of credit and praise, something AJ Brown made sure to give him in a recent press conference.
For a guy that has not played football for a year and coming back, it looks like he's been playing nonstop. Honestly, I'm gonna give praise to him, give him his flowers. You can tell he loves football. You know, he's happy to be back. You can tell he's jumping all over the field. He's happy to be back. You know, he's flying around. You know, and he's going to do special stuff for it this year.
So I couldn't agree more with AJ there. And overall, I'm just so excited about how Rodgers has looked and what he could potentially add to this defense this year if he is given a big role. But Rodgers definitely has to compete for that chance, as there's plenty of other guys that are looking good and competing as well. And that includes Kelee Ringo, who's another guy who has stood out during the spring, as after an interesting rookie season where he saw a good amount of meaningful playing time late and actually looked really good, he got in the lab during the offseason and came back even better, as he made plays throughout OTAs and especially minicamp, getting a ton of pass breakups and also having many reps where he had really good coverage. And some of those came against AJ Brown, as both of them spoke very highly of each other and alluded to some battles that they've had during the spring. And AJ even said that he seems to have gotten better since last year. So this is definitely a great sign, and Kelee even got the majority of first team reps during a couple of the Eagles practices, one practice even getting them over Isaiah Rodgers. So I definitely think he could have a chance to start this year, but what do you guys think? And then sticking with the cornerbacks, we look at the rookies, and specifically Cooper DeJean, who was used in multiple different ways throughout minicamp and OTAs, playing both the nickel and outside cornerback positions at various points. So for one, that's definitely impressive that DeJean, being a rookie, can come in and soak up so much information and learn the new system and scheme, on top of the fact that he's also learning multiple positions. But DeJean also made plays during minicamp and OTAs, while even getting some first team reps occasionally, as he had a few pass breakups, reported good coverage on multiple plays, and also a near interception where he jumped a Jalen Hurts pass and nearly picked it off one-handed, but he just unfortunately dropped it. But still, all in all, Cooper DeJean had a pretty impressive spring, which just adds to the overall hype that the rookie is getting. And it's a very similar situation for Quinyon Mitchell, who also impressed during the spring, as the rookie immediately started making plays once he got to rookie minicamp, and that continued on into the first day of OTAs, where he had a couple pass breakups, and then into minicamp, where Mitchell's opportunities got bigger, as he had a fair share of time spent with the first team, whether it be in dime packages on the inside or even at outside cornerback opposite Darius Slay. So that's definitely very exciting when you think about just how crowded the Eagles cornerback room is, and Mitchell is still getting those opportunities. And it's also exciting that Quinyon has gotten the chance to go up against the extremely talented Eagles first team offense and learn from it. And speaking of that, one of the guys Mitchell obviously has faced on that first team offense is AJ Brown, and the All-Pro receiver had some praise for Mitchell while also telling a pretty funny story about him.
Q doesn't talk as much. Guys, I don't think y'all know that. He doesn't really say anything. And the first words I heard from him, it was like, hey, that route was trash. I said, what? I said, you don't even talk and you talking trash. Yeah. And so it was funny. It was funny to hear from him, you know. And I told him, I said, all right, I like to see that. You know, I want to see you step up, you know. And I told him, I said, all right, you took the first step, but I said, now you got to back it up. You got to walk. You got to walk that walk.
So first off, can we just appreciate the kind of out of nowhere trash talk from Quinyon Mitchell, because that was pretty funny. But also, it's just cool to hear that Mitchell's confidence is already growing and he's getting better. But now going back to AJ, he also impressed during spring practices, and I know this may not be as big of a deal as some of these other guys because AJ is obviously already a super established player. I mean, he's possibly the best player on this Eagles roster, but despite all that, I still found myself being impressed with everything that he's done this spring, and that of course starts on the field, where he was easily Jalen Hurts' main target during minicamp and OTAs, and he made plenty of plays throughout these practices, which, I mean, there's really no surprise there if we're all being honest. But aside from what he actually did during practice on the field, I also just love how AJ has continued to work extremely hard and become a better leader despite getting paid a massive contract extension this offseason. I mean, this is a guy who accomplished probably every monetary goal he has ever had and is still showing up to rookie minicamp to encourage the young guys and participating in every voluntary OTA practice that we could see. I mean, it's honestly crazy to me how much negative attention the media has given Brown, when if you just watch his actions, he's clearly just a selfless team-first guy who loves football and really wants to win. And I think his actions specifically during this spring only continued to prove that. So on the field, yes, he was impressive, but it's everything else that really made this a great spring for A.J. Brown, and I think we should all be very appreciative of that. But now, moving on to another Eagles wide receiver who had a very good spring, we look at one of the new guys in Parris Campbell, who apparently made plays consistently throughout OTAs and minicamp. I mean, on day one of OTAs that was open to the media, he made some really nice plays and mainly ran with the starters, and he also continued to run with the starters most of the time throughout the rest of OTAs and minicamp. And it got to the point where, by the end of it, it seems like the wide receiver 3 job is Campbell's to lose. And even though I really do like some of the other options, mainly Anais Smith, I really can't be too mad because Campbell's speed is a really exciting element to add into the Birds offense. And also, if Campbell is earning the job by playing well during minicamp and OTAs, then he deserves it. So we obviously got a long ways to go, and training camp will paint an even clearer picture of who could win the wide receiver 3 job. But right now, this early, it seems like Campbell has become the clear favorite. But now, getting to a surprisingly impressive wide receiver from minicamp, we look at the very newly signed John Ross, as the veteran and former first-round pick who was just making his return to football after previously retiring, came into Eagles OTAs and minicamp after an impressive tryout during rookie minicamp, and he really stood out as he hauled in multiple passes seemingly during every practice, and he even got to the point where he was getting first-team reps at times during minicamp, and people at minicamp even said that Ross still has his game-breaking and record-breaking speed, with Ross himself even going as far to say that he thinks he's even faster than he was.
I think I'm faster, and I know that's going to be crazy to say, but I'm not feeling the same way I felt before physically. So that's why I say I think I'm faster. And when I say that, don't get me wrong, I ran 4.22. I'm not saying I'm 4.15 or anything, but what I'm saying is I just feel better. So I think I can consistently be faster. And I think that was my biggest thing. Like, can this guy go every single day and look the same every single day? And I feel that I'm getting to the point where I can be consistent with my speed.
If this is in fact true, then it definitely bodes well for Ross's chances of making the roster or practice squad. And the fact that he's seemingly already climbed the depth chart a bit to the point where he's getting first team reps already, I think is a very promising sign for him. But now, switching over to a completely different position and a much more established player, we look at linebacker Devin White, who has come in and quickly established himself as a leader and the team's top linebacker, as the former All-Pro has mostly taken first team reps at the linebacker position, indicating that he is the top player at that position on the team due to the fact that he has rarely rotated out and also his previous accomplishments of being one of the best linebackers in the league. And White has also made plays throughout OTAs and minicamp, including getting a pick on Jalen Hurts off a read playing a chip deflection, and it's also been reported that White made plays throughout the entire spring training period. So I think it's safe to say that the Birds got an upgrade at linebacker in Devin White, and it'll be exciting to see what he does in his first year in Philly. But then switching over to what seems to be the Eagles' other starting linebacker, at least as of now, we look at Zack Baun, as he has been impressing as well, for one, just because he has mainly gotten the start opposite of Devin White, which is definitely surprising. It definitely surprised me because I think most people would have expected Nakobe Dean to get the nod at this spot, but Baun apparently has impressed enough and earned the respect and trust of Vic Fangio to the point where he's taking most of the first team reps even with Nakobe Dean back and healthy. And Baun has also made plays and made the most of his opportunities, getting an interception on Jalen Hurts at one point. So we'll see how Baun performs once we get to training camp and if he can actually end up earning the starting job for this season. But it was definitely an impressive start at OTAs and minicamp for Baun, and the same goes for the rest of the Eagles that I mentioned in this video. Now, you guys can let me know who you were most impressed with during OTAs and minicamp down in the comments below, whether it be someone that I mentioned in this video or someone that I didn't mention. And also, I'm going to be covering the Eagles throughout the rest of this offseason, going into training camp and then eventually heading into the regular season. So if you don't want to miss any of that, make sure you subscribe, and also really importantly, turn on notifications so you're notified instantly when one of these videos is uploaded. And while you're at it, make sure you drop a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And also, if you want to watch another Eagles video going in depth on the Eagles' final minicamp practice, you can check this out right here. And now, with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.